Welcome to Eviliv3, the live media commentary show that answers the question, do all Scots drink whiskey? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing Clanlands, Whiskey, Warfare, and a Scottish Adventure like no other. This is a novel, and it was written by Sam Heughan, Graham McTavish, and Charlotte Reether. I was going to do this tomorrow, but I'm here and I got a little bit of time, so I'm going to just knock it out today. I finished this earlier today. And it's a quick read. It's 350-ish pages or something like that. So a couple days you can knock it out. This was a little bit challenging for me to get through. Let me give you a little bit of background, but my initial thoughts are the end is infinitely better than the beginning, though I don't know if that's because of familiarity with the writing style, because the book itself is presented in a strange way. Let me give you a little bit of background about what this is about, though. So Sam Heughan and Graham McTavish starred on the TV series, the Stars TV series called Outlander. It's a book series written by Diana Gabaldon. Gabaldon? I don't know. Gabaldon. And it's basically a time-traveling English-Scottish adventure film series of books and film. So it's been going for like 6 or 7 seasons or something like that. I tapped out after the last season, but it's still going strong. Anyway, it's basically set around the premise of this British woman goes to these cairns, a circle of stones that sends her back in time, and she meets Sam Heughan's character, who is basically just a Scottish warrior, who they then, of course, have to deal with the lead up to the Battle of Culloden, which is basically when the English tamped down Highland culture and destroyed Bonnie Prince Charlie's attempt at gaining the Scottish independence and throne. And so it's really like the American Revolution, except they lost. Really was what it comes down to. Catholics versus Protestants. It's independence versus union. It's Scots versus English. Even though the reality is the English had a lot of Scottish on their side as well. So it's not like it's black and white or anything like that. Anyway, my ancestry is Scottish. My last name is Campbell. I've always been into it, Scottish culture. I've always been into Clan Campbell and their Scottish Association, Highland Games, and the whole 9 yards. I just love it all. I've got numerous kilts in my closet, and I'm a big fan. So when I realized that the actors of the series that my wife and I watched were writing a book based on their adventures in Scotland, sign me up, yes please. I'm down for that journey. The problem is they're actors. They're not writers, and there's a big difference between the two. One is original thought versus acting others' thoughts. And so you're not ever really sure how well the writing is going to go. They did have the ghostwriter, Charlotte Reether, helping them along the way. But it's basically set up where they want to go discover the clan lifestyle of old Scotland and enjoy some of the sights and the people and the food and the activities and all the above and stuff. It was later made into a series called Men in Kilts, which the first season is already out. It's dope as hell. If you haven't seen it, you should. And the second season, which is actually set in New Zealand, is currently releasing, and it's great so far. I love these two together on camera. They're handsome actors, and they're funny and witty, and it's a great time. And you give me anyone in a kilt, and I'm going to watch it. So, of course, I wanted to get the book. I read the book, and it's the way the book is structured is Sam has a block of thoughts about the moment that they're in, and then Graham has a block of thoughts about the moment they're in. And then every once in a while, in italicized parentheses, they have Sam cutting into Graham's little thought midstream, and then Graham cutting into Sam's thought midstream. So rather than it being this straightforward editorial or first-hand account, it's a two-handed account of two different perspectives on any given moment. And it's a little jarring at first to get into, and not all of the information given is really interesting or valuable. Sometimes you'll start a chapter about a specific topic and they'll go off on a rant about a completely different topic, return to the topic, and then end it quickly. So it's almost as if they had to pad out content in order to fill out that chapter, which is disappointing. Ultimately, you do learn a lot about the actors, about their relationships with each other and other actors on the set, and it's really a companion piece to Outlander as a series because they're constantly referencing their experience on set dealing with Scottish culture and events, historical events and locations in relation to the reality of it as they're now revisiting and re-experiencing and talking to historians and etc. It's rather interesting on the nose, a little bit frustrating, but once you get used to it and you get their senses of humor, about halfway, 3/4 of the way through the novel, I found myself actually laughing out loud at a lot of the parts because they're genuinely funny. Especially Graham. Graham McTavish is a very, very funny person. Sounds like this would have been better as an audio format with the actors telling the stories maybe. Yeah, I'm sure there's an audio version of it. I didn't even think to look that up. It probably would have been a little bit better that way. Yeah, definitely. But I enjoy reading, so I don't care. I don't mind fighting through a book. And ultimately, it's not like I didn't enjoy it. I did. It's just, it wasn't my favorite format for a book about history or Scottish culture. I mean, I'm in the middle of reading Alistair Campbell's History of Clan Campbell from the very beginning of recorded and oral history of the clan to, of course, modern era. And it is incredibly fascinating, but again, it's a historical work, a scholarly work of historical fact and nonfiction. So it's a little tedious to get through. So I'm kind of taking my time. In any case, Clan Campbell has a reputation, we'll say, for being murderous and land grabby, and most of that's pretty true. But nothing is black and white in anything in life, right? There's no good or bad. Everything's shades of gray, and perspective and circumstance dictate who happens to be right or wrong in any given moment. And so one of the redeeming parts of this is that they did talk about Clan Campbell a lot for me. I find it redeeming. There's an event called the Massacre at Glencoe where and a song was written about it, which is actually a really good song, where it highlights that Clan Campbell came and slaughtered Clan MacDonald on orders of the king, which they did. But it wasn't just Clan Campbell. It was a military regiment that was stationed at the location. They didn't know that they were going to be asked to murder them. The documentation came over with the order from the king saying you must kill the entire clan because Clan MacDonald, that particular group, were thieves. They would steal people's cattle, and the king was sick and tired of dealing with it. And so he had the military take care of the problem as a signal for any other cattle thieves to not do it, or else this is going to happen to you. And so it was like 13 Clan Campbell members and then just a myriad of other clan members in that military regiment that then, of course, didn't even slaughter all of them. They were actually tipping them off the night before, like, hey, maybe you should go, visit your relatives here, or maybe you should go sleep on the other side of the lock. I mean, there's, you might not want to be here in the morning. You sort of tipping their hat saying, danger is coming, get the hell out while you can. And many of them did. But, of course, history recreates it as saying, oh, evil Clan Campbell came in and murdered them unprovoked for no reason. And this, and people like today, I don't think Scots in Scotland give a damn, but Americans sort of LARPing their clan history definitely seem to care. And they make big fusses about, oh, your clan hates my clan and bullshit like that. It doesn't fucking matter. But because of that American version of needing to be a part of it and needing to have some sort of stake in it, and our desire to make teams and form alliances and that human tribalism trait, they do, create these lies about it and sort of build it up as a good and bad thing. this book dispelled that myth. And I really appreciate it because I knew the truth, but I didn't know anyone else knew the truth. I know historians know the truth, but the fact that these two guys went out of their way, specifically Graham, McTavish, went out of their way to find the reality of the battles, of the scenarios throughout the course of this book, it really encourages me to not only continue reading and finishing the novel, but the other people are going to be reading it because there's a ton of fans about this series and this series of books and these two particular actors. So they're all going to read it and learn the truth about my ancestral clan, which I like. We don't have to like live with this black and white view of reality. We can accept the fact that, yeah, based on the perspective of the person in the moment, they're going to see it one way and someone else is going to see it another. And let's let the facts speak for themselves and then let the individuals interpret those through their own perspective, as long as we understand that it's perspective, not fact. The Battle of Culloden was another really defining moment, the ultimate defining moment for the Highlanders of Scotland. It signaled the end of Highland culture. It was literally outlawed to be a Highlander. You couldn't speak Gaelic. You couldn't wear kilts or any tartans of any kind. Tartans are the sort of cross-stitched colors that you see a lot of kilts, well, all kilts in. And ultimately, sort of facing the reality of Scottish culture, because we as Americans, or just arguably modern people, reflect on history as if it's always been the way that we see it now. And that's not the case. History is dramatically different. For example, tartan culture, meaning a family having a specific looking set of tartan that's theirs, like Clan Campbell tartan or Clan MacDonald tartan, we reflect back and think, oh, that's how it's always been since the dawn of time. But the reality is it wasn't until the Victorians reflected on Scottish culture that they decided. So this was like the 19th century. They decided that there should be tartans for each clan and their tartans should have meaning and stuff like that. That was never a thing before. And so it's a very recent transition that we realize that. And also just clan culture being family and sort of safety and, working together for a common end was a big deal. And we think of family as your nuclear family, mother, father, sons and daughters, grandparents and stuff. But the clan system was very different in Scotland. You could sort of foster an enemy's child in order to maintain a form of alliance, and they would foster yours, and they would then be adopted into that clan. And so you would have clan members that are not blood relatives at all, and they would then perpetuate future generations of that clan that they were fostered into. And you had a lot of that. And so when you think of a clan, you think, oh, well, it's Clan Campbell, then they're all Campbells. Well, no, in name, yes, they are, but not in blood. Clans have less to do with direct blood lineage than they do with cultural significance in the moment that they existed. And so understanding this is what they sort of went through and sort of uncovered. And, they worked through the food and the culture and the sports and sort of historical figures like Rob Roy, for example, and deal with myths. Because Scotland was infinitely worse with witch burnings and persecution of witches than colonial Americans ever were. like infinitely, like hundreds and hundreds of men and women, women and men, I should say, for the emphasis, were burned at the stake and murdered and tortured as witches in Scotland, whereas I think it was like 13 in America were burned at the stake. So, Scottish culture informed the idea of independence for America, with the Battle of Culloden and the Highlanders literally being thrown out after that battle if they weren't either indentured slaves or murdered outright or thrown in prison and then murdered. Then they were forced to go overseas and work in the colonies for the English. And that's where you get Scottish culture regionally throughout all of the original 13 colonies of the U.S., and then their sense of independence ignited against the English, the rest of the other colonists. And so that flame and fire of independence fed through and bled through to the French, because the Scottish and French had alliances together, working in opposition to England. And so then we, of course, see the French Revolution after the American Revolution. So, I mean, it's a very interesting turn of events that you see, all informed from this Scottish fight for independence, spiraling out globally. And this book does not get into that. I'm just piecing that together from my own reading and understanding of history. And who knows, maybe I'm completely wrong too. But that's my interpretation of it. And I just really appreciated that they went through the steps to really find, if there was a clan argument, for example, then they would get both clan members, like clan leaders, and then ask them their perspectives in the same space so that they could have, they would get them in the same space so that they could have an open dialogue about it. And again, Scots aren't as fervent about the biases that historically are attributed to the clans that Americans are. And so we see them, of course, getting along cordially and having a great time during the discussion and stuff. And then just also, their celebration of friendship between Sam and Graham, which is beautiful. I'm one of those people that if you can find a close friend, I'm going to do what I can to maintain that friendship. And it's going to be of significance. It's going to have meaning between me and that person. I'm not one of those types that sort of flippantly has friends and leaves them and stuff like that. It means something, you're making an emotional connection with some other human, and that means something to each of you, and you want to foster and build that, because real friendships are very rare. And you can tell that these two are developing that. They don't initially have it, but they're developing it through the course of the experience of writing this novel and sharing this experience of discovering their own, because they are both Scottish, born in Scotland. To Scottish parents. They are both Scottish, and they're both learning about their own ancestry through the course of this and building the friendship together through the course of this. And there's something genuinely beautiful about that. I really enjoy watching it. And so ultimately, of course, it's a #1 New York Times bestseller because of so many fans buying up these books because they love the series and the people so much. And what it does is it shines a light on Scottish culture. And I've always known the richness and diversity of Scottish culture, but I don't think the rest of normal people out there understand it. And most people have a direct connection to it, through their ancestry. And they're just unaware of it. So, things like Angus beef or the rich diversity of seafood, the rich culture of dancing and games. And even the Olympics are inspired by Scottish Highland games. Things like this that are just sort of primitive and primal in their foundation, fed throughout the course of history, informing everyone that they come in contact with and influencing their versions of their own culture. That's the strength of Scottish culture, in my opinion. And it's really showcased well in this novel, ultimately. So my favorite parts of the book are going to be where there's the humor aspect, where they're doing some activity. Like there's a really funny moment when they're doing a motorcycle with a sidecar. The motorcycle's beat up. It has an open leak in the gas tank. Sam's never driven it before, but he tells Graham he has, and they can't get it started, and it keeps stalling out, and the owner has to come back and keep trying to, come up and get it running again, and then they drive on. But there's this moment where Graham is wearing this ridiculous cape, and it wasn't tucked back in after the producer or the sound guy fixed his mic. And so it got caught in the wheel, and it wrenched him out of the sidecar, and it almost broke his neck. And the way that Graham is retelling it from his perspective was literally hilarious. And I was just laughing out loud, reading this wonderful reminiscence of a terrible moment, genuinely scary. But in reflection, of course, in hindsight, it's funny as hell. And there's just a bunch of little things like that. And they rib each other like me and my friends do. We're like, if from the outside, if you watch me and my friends talking to each other, you'd probably think we hate each other because we're busting each other's balls hard all the time. But it's out of affection and love, and so we're okay with it. You don't really see it on this stream or like on the YouTube stuff very much. But if we're in person, like, all bets are off. There is no safety in topics or language or scenarios. We are very raw and we are very open with, just tearing each other down because we can take it and because it's fun and it's funny. And that's what they're doing the whole time. I mean, Graham is known as Lady McTavish from Sam because he's very delicate in sensibilities. Of course, Graham explains it's because of experience and he knows what he is capable of and what he doesn't want to do. But Sam just sees him as being, a sort of a Nancy in some cases, just a bit of a wuss. And it's funny, like genuinely funny. And it was all written and experienced throughout the COVID epidemic. And then once they were done writing this, they went to Stars and they pitched the TV series, which became Men in Kilts. And Stars was immediately like in the pitch room. They're like, yeah, we'll buy it. Let's do this. Like, that never happens anywhere. You always have to like come back for follow-up meetings or negotiate or anything like that. But just right off the bat, they immediately like accepted the premise because it's so good. So that was sort of my favorite. My least favorite is the style of the writing, having Sam do his block of text and then Graham do his block of text. It got exhaustive reading it. And then, you're literally reliving the exact same moments that you'd already read through the next guy's eyes. And you're like, I already did this already as a reader. I don't want to revisit it. I want to move the fuck on. And you can't always do that. You kind of have to wait in some cases. So that's a little frustrating to me, but I can overlook it because ultimately they clarify history through perspective and facts. They deal with and highlight Scottish culture and feuds in a wonderful way. And I think it's valuable for anyone who just wants to dip their toe in a little bit more humorous of a way of really lightly brushing over Scottish history, because they don't go into a lot, but they do give you a sort of a bird's eye view, as it were, of what it's like. And it's fun. So my ultimate rating, I give this 4 out of 5 evil eyes. If the writing was more of an editorial seamless narrative and not a jumping between the two version of that editorial, I would have enjoyed it a lot more, though it would have been shorter and that wouldn't have been better. I like longer reads personally. So a little give and take, a little bad with the good, but I definitely recommend it to anyone with any Scottish ancestry or anyone who likes to explore other cultures in a traveling scenario, a sort of a setup of two people just traveling in this really cramped Fiat van, which is a very funny premise in and of itself. And there's just so many wonderful little situations. Like they do this tandem bike where one's in front and the other's in back, and Sam is the one in the back, and he's like literally not biking at all intentionally. And Graham's little bit of it with it before he knows that Sam's not pedaling at all. He's like, this is the hardest damn bike I've ever ridden. I'm completely sore. My legs are burned out. I'm going up these hills. And it's like, it's almost as if he's not pedaling at all. And then it gets to Sam's bit and he's like, yeah, I didn't pedal at all. Just to mess with him. I mean, that's of course a very quick synopsis of the entirety of that experience, but it was hilarious. It was very, very fun. And the whole book is like that. So if you like humor, which, I mean, what kind of a monster are you if you don't like humor? Then I think you'll probably dig this book. It's worth the read. Check it out. Thanks for tuning in. I always appreciate you. Always remember the evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil. Maybe on a tandem bike in Scotland without pedaling.